Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is you want me to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Chips. Arvo Pärt, Credo, or maybe Credo. I'm not sure if that's a long or a softy. Since 20th century classical fell off the patron pole, you shall now be yelled at by a full choir. This was Pärt's concluding statement on modernism. Optional vocabulary is 12-tone serialism and aleatoric, with bonus points for naming the musical quote. So, 12-tone serialism, I, I've heard of something similar to it, so I had to go look it up though. I know it as 12-tone composition. It is just making sure that all 12 notes in the Western notation show up with roughly equal recognition. They're all represented equally, um, without any instrument or without any note having more of a prominence in the song. The other word I have not heard before, aleatoric, and this is neat because we can actually apply it to something we have heard recently. It is by chance, randomization. Merriam-Webster defines it as characterized by chance or indeterminate elements. When we checked out the Igor, My Chicken Symphony, that was an aleatoric composition because part of it, the chicken part, was completely random. And I talked about rolling dice to determine note lengths or time signatures or whatever. That's introducing aleatoric aspects to the music. So that's a new vocabulary word that I didn't know I needed in my life. Very cool. So we're probably going to listen to something that sounds random and was probably composed with random elements and features all 12 notes. We may be in a chromatic scale, or we may just give equal spacing for equal time for each of the, well, it can't even be for each of the chords, because there's going to be overlap in notes as well. I don't know. Let's just dive into this. Let's see what Pärt is bringing to the table with this interesting description. I don't know if you heard that, kind of quiet. There was some shuffling, like a page flipping or something. Such powerful chords. Beautiful dynamic attention. Love a good timpani roll. Oh, the decrescendo on that snare roll was immaculate. This is phenomenal. It's wild how, and that's the skill in it, but just how connected a lot of this is felt. It's been one ride despite what feels to be an ever-changing key and mode. The backbone of the song is constantly in flux, and yet it feels like it doesn't feel disjointed. No. Wait. Yeah, I was gonna say it's not. Oh, well, that's an interest. That's not. What? I mean, that's the chord I was waiting for. Not how I was expecting it to be played. And now it's over. Yeah. Okay. Uh. Where do I start with this one? Okay, I'm gonna start with the place that makes most sense to me. I have no idea what was going on here. I got very little images in my head from any of this. No emotional response to a lot of it. I'm gonna blame that on it just being a lot to take in on a first listen. But I don't know that I'm gonna have any overarching, profound views on what this means or what it how it spoke to me. I don't think I'm gonna have one of those at the end of this video. It is a lot. I want to double back to something Chips had stated in the comment that this was Pärt's response. Was it response? Let me pull this up real quick. Concluding statement on modernism. That's what it was. The concluding statement on modernism. It's interesting then to hear so much of what I interpret to be a lot of mostly avant-garde and experimental side of modern classical music. We have the collectivist approach where the entire band takes part in a single idea. We hear that a bunch there in the middle. We also have the chaos, everybody doing whatever they want, the cacophony of it. That's present here as well. And there's also the eclectic use of instrumentation. Something very cool. I don't know if I've talked about this before. Notation doesn't have to be the traditional notation that we all know. When you think of sheet music, you think of 5 lines, 4 lines. I don't know why I'm blanking out of it. You think of the staff and dots with lines coming off of them. Some of them connected, some of them with little flags, some of them with dots and the hashtag symbol next to them. Getting ready to get a viral tweet going on some of these notes. Um, that's a bad dad joke. And that's pretty much. Oh, and sometimes little squiggly things and blocks. If you know music, we're talking about notes, lengths, pitches, and rests. That's what a lot of it means. But have you ever seen sheet music with the shape of an alligator for a note? Have you ever seen sheet music without a bar every 4 or 5 symbols? I have. I don't know specifically if I've seen an alligator, but the context is there. A lot of experimental music can't be notated with traditional notation. They possibly could, but it would be very exaggerant. The tools would be crudely used in a way that they're not designed for it. So if you're going to work outside the bounds of traditional music, you kind of need to make up your own notation to go with it. Um, and so that's where we end up hearing some of these really interesting sounds. Specifically, I heard them in the trumpet and trombone there in the big, right before the cacophonous moment when everybody was just doing their own thing. It was right before that. And we were getting these very wild pitch changes, because the cool thing about brass is that you can change pitch without moving. For a trombone, the slide, or for a valved instrument like the trumpet or the tuba or the baritone, without actually moving the valves. Embouchure is very important for pitch in brass. It's important for pitch in most instruments, but more important in brass. If you don't push any valve down, you can hit C, G, the C near the top of the staff, and then E, G, and C above the staff. And if you push even higher, I believe it's also the same fingering for the next octave of E, G, and C, though I don't know if any trumpets can hit that fourth C up there. Maybe they can. Humans push themselves every day. I suppose it's possible. But that's where you get the bugle. Is it the bugle? I don't know. Anyways, anytime that you taps, the song Taps, it can be played on a valveless brass instrument because it's entirely controlled by the embouchure. It's all C's, G's, and E's. So where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. So there's a bunch of really wild pitch shifts and slides and half valves and blastings. Like there's just a bunch of things combined together that does not produce traditional sounds, but that are used in ways that sound very animalistic, which went very well with all the grunting that was also going on at the time. Anyways, what I'm what I'm bringing all this around to is that we have these oddities in instrumentation or instrumental playing, which is a very modern approach that goes along with the chaotic approach and the collectivist approach. It's just this eclectic type of performance. There's just a lot of almost examples of various ideas that are very prolific in modern, especially experimental or classical composition. I don't know if it's. I need to read up. Let me check this out real quick. Let me see if I can see if this is just like a little. So, Pärt is a contemporary classical music composer. Oh yeah, composer. He's Estonian. That's cool. Um, I'm trying to figure out what type of composition he is known for. And I was hoping it would be right in that opening bit there, and it's not. I'm curious if he's done a lot of this experimental modernism, but it doesn't say because it's going to shape my understanding of this. This could be a satirical view of it. It feels like everything, almost done exaggeratedly so. But it could also be his final stamp on the world of modernism. Let me do everything I've done in the past to, let's crank it all to 11 and call this my final modernist work. I don't know how to read that. It is certainly exaggerated in a lot of ways, and I don't know if that's a satirical exaggeration or an outdoing everything I've done. So I'm going to leave it at that, though. I'm really glad that Chips included that little bit there because otherwise I would have just felt that this was a lot of a lot and had no understanding of why. And for me to understand that this was his final discussion point on modernistic classical composition, it paints it all in an interesting light. The exaggerations mean something. Now, the other two aspects that Chips brought up, the serialism I think is interesting, primarily because this doesn't feel like a serialistic work. Not 12-tone serialism, anyways. Had that not been put in the comments, I would never have brought this up. 12-tone serialism tends to bring about a very chromatic feeling to songs. It's usually quite evident that a song is frequently moving between modes and keys to ensure that no single note shows up more often than any other. If you give every note equal importance, you end up having a song where every note feels equally important, and that is the chromatic chord. The chromatic scale. The song tends to take on attributes of that. This is meticulously composed to ensure that that does not happen. I never got a single moment in here where I felt like this was overly reliant on every single note. It, to me, often feels like it's simply exploring sound. Emotive sound, even. There's a lot of chords that resolve exceptionally well. The tension always feels purposefully selected. It isn't just any tense chord, it's the one that fits perfectly with where the song came from and where it will resolve to. There is a ton of attention to chordal detail, and that type of attention isn't always typically paid when dealing with serialism because the objective of making sure every note is equal outweighs chordal structure. It's difficult to have such uniformity in your chordal ideas when you're fixating so much on individual notes. And Pärt just pulls this off masterfully. I honestly have no idea. I mean, everything is so smooth. The song feels so congruent from one idea to the next. When we look at the song top down, there's a lot of individual sections. There's the loud section. There's the contrasty section. There's the big booming section. There's the quiet sections, right? They're all very individualistic. I cannot talk today. But when you approach it linearly in time while you're actually listening to it, it doesn't feel disconnected at all. Every idea seems to somehow flow into the next, even when there's very rough shifts, sonically, harmonically. There's still a flow to it. There's a huge mastery to the chordal ideas, the harmonic ideas underlying this entire track. And that's just what I got on a first listen. I'll tell you, there's a lot of stuff I missed. Um, but it is clear as day how much work he put into the foundation of this song to ensure it both feels connected from start to finish while obeying this objective of 12-tone serialism. It's just impressive. Now, Chips also mentioned aleatoric composition. I'm curious how much of this was random. There's certainly some parts that feel random. Time-wise, specifically, how long we are in a specific section. But there's also a lot of linear patterns going on. Like, I thought maybe when we were doing the everybody play and then bits of silence and then everybody play and then bits of silence there in the middle, that might have been random, but it consistently shortened and shortened and shortened until we had an overlapping concept of the opening piano line, the choir shouting something, and then the big burst of energy from the horns. It was a linear dive there, so I don't know what part of that would have been random. Maybe it's a part that's invisible to my ear, maybe invisible on a first listen. Maybe a majority of the surface level stuff is controlled, and it's a lot of underlying invisible mechanics that are going on that are randomly selected. Maybe chordal movements are random, right? Maybe it's every 4 bars. We have a random root chord. And if that's the case, I'm thinking, that actually works because then it gives you time to have a nice chordal structure, to have resolution and tension, so that you can have these constructed bits while also giving you a random place to go next. And then I'm like, dang, though, if you're going to randomize that, then you're going to have to work even harder to make sure that every note is consistently and adequately represented. So I don't know. That sounds like it's adding way too much work. But given the little I know of Pärt, it seems like the person to be up to the task on that. So outside of these, though, there's just a lot of contrast, and that's going to be my big thing here that I really enjoy. We have volume contrast. My visualizer has at least 60 dBs of range of music, of volume that is fully explored. Every bit of that is represented. There's also plenty of pure silence going on in here. There's plenty of places of reverb, of allowing the acoustics of the recording hall. Well, I guess it'd be a performance hall where they recorded in. Because I was going to start that saying recording studio, and I was like, Bryan, you need to flip that because they probably didn't record this in a studio. But where the echo of the notes, especially the really big explosive moments, can resonate. It's not pure silence, but the instruments are not playing. Plenty of moments for those echoes to exist and to be heard as well. But volume isn't the only contrast. We also have dynamic volume. Volume isn't the only dynamic contrast we have. We also have width. We have these really tiny piano parts that are pushed right up against these massive full orchestra, not even really stingers. They're just these big hits that are held on to, and they'll bounce back and forth between that. And that's technically also a volume thing, but it's also width. It's this little tiny thing in this big space, and then the big space fills up. Plenty of chordal and textural, emotional dynamic qualities going on. Every emotion I felt was here. There's anger, there's excitement, there's soothingness, comfort. There's sadness, there's tension or anxiety. Everything is represented. And part of that's just going to be from the serialism, ensuring that we hear so many different chords being represented. And then there's also the contrast of what seems to be typical layered composition versus chaotic do what you want composition. People just shouting. So there's a lot of dynamic qualities here that I'm a huge fan of. I don't necessarily think I caught them all. I don't know what most of them meant as far as their involvement in the song, but I enjoyed that they were there. It's always nice to pick up on things like that. Um, I think the last thing I want to touch on before we wrap this up is the percussion. Can we talk about that for a second? There are two key parts. One is the timpani had so much involvement in the first 4 minutes, and I absolutely loved the timpani rolls. A lot of them started out soft and got higher and came up with the full orchestra. There's just something about a timpani that sounds so good. Um, it's probably my favorite percussion instrument aside from pitched ones. I'm a huge fan of the marimba too. It's just a beautiful tone. But yeah, I mean it is technically pitched. There is a foot pedal. You have to tune them, but they're big drums. They hit one note typically, or it's simplification. They hit one note, and I it's my favorite one. It just has such a beautiful sound compared to bass drums and snares, bongos. There's something about the timpani. It's so good. And just hearing it, its presence in a lot, even in one of the sections, it just sat on a roll, just way low in the volume. The orchestra would swell up and come back down and swell up and come back down. And every time it came back down, you would hear more of the timpani until you got to hear that low rumble just sitting underneath everything. It swells up again, and it's just this big orchestral moment. And the orchestra comes back down until you can hear this low rumble again. It's just, you can feel that there's this grit, there's something underneath all this, no matter how loud this thing is that the orchestra represents. There is this drive, this intensity sitting, but potential energy waiting to be unleashed underneath all of it. It's just a beautiful moment. And there was this phenomenal, oh my geez, it was a snare roll that started out probably at triple forte, and then just brought it way down with this decrescendo to fit with the orchestra. And it was just the cleanest snare roll uh, quietingness. Why can't I just said the word decrescendo I have ever heard. It was just it's not even just the evenness, the precision of the roll itself and the evenness of the volume decreasing, but it's both of those in tandem while also keeping the full bodied sound. You see, you have to hit the snare lighter in order to have a lower volume, but you also can't lose the precision. You can't lose the body of the sound. It just has to get lighter. It's the same thing I've talked about with horns, where there's a difference between air pressure and volume. Even if you're playing soft, it still typically needs to be a full bodied sound. You still need proper air pressure. You just need to reduce the volume. And this is something that you learn as a novice. You pick up an instrument and you usually equate, if I blow harder, it makes it louder, and you equate the two, but that's not true. You have to be able to differentiate them. And the same thing goes for drummers. If you play softer, you play lighter, but you're going to eventually learn that you can't change the precision and attack. You just need to reduce the volume, and this drummer just nails it. It was so good. Golly. And I wish I had more to say about this, because I think that kind of wraps up my understanding of this first listen here. Um, it's a wild song, and I wish I could have connected with it more and had a better understanding of it, but I do enjoy a lot of the individual parts. Even if I don't understand what the art is doing, I can appreciate what it did. It's kind of weird. I don't appreciate the art, or I don't understand the artwork, but I appreciate the brush strokes. Does that make sense? Just convert that into music, and you'll get it. Those are my thoughts on Arvo Pärt's Credo. Credo. I still don't know how to pronounce that one, unfortunately. Let me know what you thought. If you enjoyed it or not, anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, put those ideas in the comments. Above the comment section is a description box, and there's a link for Linktree. It takes you to this menu right here. It has links for everything related to the channel. You can find ways to support the channel, to join the Discord community, to email me, check out the music I've made, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. Alright, that wraps it up. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC. As usual, we'll continue on with New Wave Week and check out another special selection. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.